Definition of the word thanatophobia, fear of death. I think there's another similar word, necrophobia. And the point is, from a Torah perspective, there's no need to really fear death because we know we're going, so to say, to a better place, to the place where the soul came from. And therefore, it's returning to the spiritual realm. Today's lesson is called Proper Perspective. And what we're going to try to explore is how death informs life. And that is, we're very grateful to First Realty for sponsoring our photocopies. Also, one more thing. Okay, it's not spelled correctly. I sent out a register last week if you want to receive email updates from the class. I forgot to bring it today, but it's much easier for you just to subscribe yourself. You go to the website, chabadsouthafrica.org/subscribe, and select Jewish Learning Institute, JLI. Then you'll get all my emails about the JLI course. If you're getting them already, then you don't have to worry. So what we're talking today is, the central question that we have is, can coming to terms with or contemplating the end of our life, our mortality, can that in any way improve our quality of life? What do you think? What are your thoughts? There are more seats up here, and there are more copies around, I believe, as well. Can the thought of death, contemplating our mortality, realizing that we're not here forever, can that in any way improve us as human beings? What benefits are there to that? That's a question. Anyone want to give it a shot? Anyone want to share a thought on that? By the way, do you prefer if I use a microphone or not? Could you hear me in the back without a microphone? You're fine. If you want me to use the microphone, I'm happy to put it on any time. So that's our central question for today. If anyone wants to give a shot on answering it, I'm happy to hear your thoughts. Do you think there's any benefit to contemplating, to thinking about that we're mortal, that our lives, we're not going to be around here forever, that one day we're going to go? Definitely there's benefit to thinking of it, or we rather not think about that? Yeah?
I think then your life becomes more meaningful because everything that you do in this life will impact you later on.
Certainly. And if you want to think about your children and any message you want to impart to them, which later on today we're going to talk about the importance of wills from a Jewish perspective. Right? We know where there's a will, there's a relative, so we don't have to discuss it too much right now. But there was one Jew, he's in the 60s, one of my guys who comes to my seniors programs from time to time. So he came into the doctor the other day, and the doctor checked him and says, wow, you've got good genetic system, I see that you're quite healthy. Checks off his health chart. He says, I just have a question for you. You're entering your geriatric years. Tell me, how old is your father when he died? He says, who says my father's dead? He says, really? He said, yeah, my father's 87 years old. He's currently in Switzerland. He's skiing. When he comes back, he'll go to Schlange during December holidays. He says, wow, that's impressive. I mean, I could see he really got good genes. How old was his father when he died? So who said his father's dead? Huh? He also goes to Switzerland and skiing. In fact, he's getting married next week. So what? How old is your grandfather? He says 107. Getting married next week. Where does he get that crazy idea from? Who said it was his idea? His parents are forcing him into it. So some of us think we're going to live forever and life is going to keep on going, right? But is that really the case? And as I'd like to open today's discussion, and I say discussion because I do want interactivity, as long as we stay on focus on the topic, and we could always, if it's something that's on your mind, we could always get back to it next week, which reminds me of the question that we got last week was, when does the soul enter the body? Seemingly, from last week's text, there may have been confusion that the soul enters the body perhaps only at birth, just as Adam, the verse says, when Adam was created, Vayipach ba'apav nishmat chaim, that God breathed into his nostrils a soul of life. So that was only Adam, the first person. Ever since then, from the moment a fetus is created, there's already a soul. And that takes us to the concept of abortion. Why there's opposition from the Jewish perspective to abortion, because it is already a viable living body. Yeah, Mark?
There seems to be a bit of a contradiction in last week's notes. Because at one point it said something along the lines of, when about 40 days before the child is born, the soul gets told by Hashem that there's this debate between the soul and Hashem that soul be assigned to the body. So
The 40 days before birth is whom it's going to marry, who its soulmate is going to be. who its other half is. That's what happens. It says in the Talmud or in Kabbalah. I'm not sure where it says it. I know the expression that 40 days before the birth. Or is it not 40 days before? Maybe it's 40 days before gestation. 40 days before gestation, that the soul is told before the soul is dispatched, whom its other half is. Now just imagine that concept of marriage from a Torah perspective, that your marriage partner, your spouse, is your other half of your soul. That's a separate discussion. We won't go into that now.
I think it said the soul gets attached to the body.
Gets attached.
The soul is told you will be inside this body.
Oh, that the soul is told which body it's going to be in.
Yeah.
Okay.
Just read the note, but I think it's it.
Fine, we could get back to that. But let's focus on today's discussion for now. And today's discussion is about less soul related. Sorry to fool you with Journey of the Soul, because today we're going to be a little bit more body oriented, okay? We're getting back to soul next week. And the question I asked you a moment ago was, is there any benefit in contemplating our mortality, our finitude in this world? Come on inside, there's more seats. So let's start with our first text. Let's go straight into it. This week we're reading about the birth of, it's quite a nice story, the Torah portion we're reading this week. Just to give you a quick vart on the Parsha, because it's related to our course. The portion is called Vayera. And it's the story of Abraham, just 3 days after his circumcision. He's sitting outside because he was a very generous and hospitable man. And he's looking for guests. And who appears? The 3 angels. And they have 3 messages from him. One of them is that they're going to have a child. And of course, his wife is 90 years old, and he is 100 years old, 99 at the time. It's sort of a little bit funny. We're going to have a child, and she's laughing. But indeed, 9 months later, they have a child, and they call him Yitzchak, because it was funny that they're having a child at such old age. So that is the context in which our first text takes place. Anyone want to read text 1, page 46? Any volunteers? Someone loud and clear? More notes. There should be. Using these? No? Okay, pass this around. Maybe there's other places as well. Cold air conditioning. It could be adjusted. Mike's sorting that out. Okay. Logistics. First text. Who's in for first text? If no one else wants to do it, I might have to do it. Go ahead.
Abraham, there were no physical signs of old age. Consequently, one who wished to speak to Abraham might mistakenly speak to Isaac because of identical appearance. And one who wished to speak to Isaac might mistakenly speak to Abraham. Thereupon Abraham prayed, and physical signs of old age came into existence, as it is written in Genesis. Abraham was aged 12.
So the story is, they have this child, Isaac, but Isaac looks identical to his father Abraham. Now how are you supposed to differentiate between the two? Who's Abraham, who's Isaac, how do you know? So Abraham prays to God, please make me look old. And hence we have the verse in the Torah that says, Va'avraham zaken baba yamin. Abraham was old, advanced in his years. Doesn't that seem a little bit superfluous, redundant, saying the same thing twice? He was old, advanced in his years. So what is the Talmud answer? Not only was he advanced in years, because many people lived to ripe old ages in those days. Look at the biblical narrative of the last few weeks where we're reading about Adam lived 930 years, and Noah lived 950 years, and Methuselah lived over 1,000 years. People had long life in those days. Avram only lived 175 years, short life compared to his predecessors. So the word zaken means he was old, but not only was he old, he prayed, not only did he have a long life, but he prayed to look old. He wanted the white hair, the wrinkles. Contrast that with today's day and age. Text 2. We don't have to read it inside as we're advancing, as time is going on, but read it later. It's an article from the USA Today. And this article gives us a little perspective of the anti-aging industry. Let me tell you something. If you want to make some money, or if you're looking for a stock to invest in, I think the anti-aging industry is a good market to invest in. I mean, just look at the numbers here of, going to Santon City, you'll meet a lot of Israelis who want to sell Dead Sea products to you that will take away the wrinkles and it'll make you live forever, right? Come, look how beautiful you look. Right? Anyone want to guess numbers of anti-aging industry? Look at this. The numbers, they say in 2013, the global anti-aging industry was worth $195 billion. That's about 800 trillion zillion rands. Okay, and currently they say it is worth, or they say by 2020 it's going to be about $300 billion dollars. So quite an industry, hey? Quite an industry to get into. Now, just think about the two. Avraham prays to get old, to look old. The rest of us today, Botox, anti-aging cream, whatever other things we could get in the market to prevent ourselves from looking old. Teeth whitening, so nobody, skin creams. I don't know what else you could get in the market. Acai berry teas and whatever else people want to eat or drink. So here's my question to you. Why does Avraham pray to get old and we're trying to get young? Remember when we were kids, especially when we were like 15, we were always older than 18. My kid is 7. He tells me he's 7 and 3.5 months. Today, no one's over 18. All of us, 18. I'm 17. Been 17 for the last 3 centuries, but... So what is this? What's this idea that Avraham wants to get old? Is there any significance? Is there any benefit to being old? If you take a look at text 3, you'll see that according to the Torah narrative, you'll never find, you won't encounter anyone getting sick. Nobody got sick until, who's the first person to get sick? Jacob. Jacob gets sick. Before he dies, he asks God, please, I want to be able to sort things out with my family. It says in the Talmud that in the olden days, people used to sneeze. And remember, how did we get our soul? Just as God breathed the soul through the nostrils and it came into the body, when a person sneezed, the soul exited the body and that was the end of life. Yaakov changed that. He prayed to God that one should get sick before they die and have the benefit then of sorting things out with their family or whatever it is. Yaakov here specifically asks about his family. And we're going to address these questions now on page 48. So we have 5 questions in front of us. Let's discuss them for a moment. Firstly, why did Avraham want to look old? Is there any advantage to looking old? Look at this guy. I don't know how well you can see. Before, he's very wrinkled. Now he came to Chabad's anti-aging program, and look what we did to him. So is there any benefit? Is there any advantage to looking old?
I have a problem.
Yes?
Until he asked for it,
Yeah.
there were no physical signs
That's what it seems from what the Talmud said.
of age.
Right.
So therefore, where did he get the concept of looking old?
Maybe he doesn't ask to look old. Maybe he asks for a difference between himself and his son because they had this identical appearance. And in order to distinguish between the two, maybe that's why he asked for it. Also, as I was reading, as I was preparing, and those especially who came to our Judaism Decoded class know that not every statement of the Talmud is meant to be taken literally. There's allegory in it, and that's what we're discussing today. We're not discussing the literal aspects of it. So we don't know. The Torah doesn't say that this is necessarily the way it was. If the Talmud is telling us this, it's not necessarily to tell us that he was the first one to turn white and wrinkled, etc. But rather because of the message as we're discussing today. So here's our question. Whether that was the case or not, is there an advantage to looking old? Yeah, Bernice.
I think perhaps you get respect.
Oh, definitely. Yes, certainly. Yep. I sometimes, with these white hairs, you feel like, But let me ask you the opposite. Why do people wish to avoid and slow aging? Oh yeah, avoid and slow aging. Is there any reason to avoid aging, to slow the aging process at least? By the way, we have some good pharmacists here in the shul. If anyone wants to buy some products, Bluebird Pharmacy, Birdhaven Pharmacy, Birdhaven. Any other pharmacies here? If you're ever in Linksfield, anyone else have to promote? Okay. So, again, is there any reason why people want to avoid aging? Why wouldn't you want to age? Purely vanity? Could you think of any pragmatic reasons besides for vanity? nearing death, so the fear of death coming closer. But unfortunately, we know young people have also died. Okay, but we're getting to that in a moment. We're getting to the idea that mortality is not based on age per se. Yeah?
Maybe Abraham didn't feel that when he looked this way, he felt inside.
Okay? But he felt younger inside. Well, I'm asking today, conversely, the opposite. Abraham wanted to look older. What about today's industry where everyone wants to look younger? We don't want to get old. We don't want to look old. So what's wrong? Just think about it. I work with senior citizens, so it's something I get to hear all the time. People getting retrenched from their jobs because they're getting older. Older people are, I don't mean this against anybody, but that seems to be at least the perception people say. They're slower at learning new things, not as advanced of all the technicalities of today's world.
An illness.
Pardon?
An illness.
Illness, yeah. So there certainly are disadvantages one could think of, right? So if your opinion were asked, would you vote to confirm Abraham's request? Or not? No, thanks to his request, we're all starting to age. Any other perspectives?
Rabbi, isn't it because people want to live forever? Whereas Abraham realized the journey of the soul. Like, you're not here forever, you're here for your purpose.
We're here for our purpose, to fulfill our mission in this world. Perhaps Abraham was the patriarch of the Jewish people, and maybe he realized that. Very good point.
What is your temple? You want to look after the temple.
Oh, absolutely. So, if that's the case, is that for or against aging? Against aging. But does aging necessarily mean we're getting weaker, or is it an indication of that in any way? Is it? Well, there are older people who don't. You can look after your health. I think aging is going to happen regardless.
Yes.
Okay, here's another question. Why did Jacob ask for illness before he died?
So that he could prepare and take the family together and stay in the house.
I'll get a little personal here. 9 years ago, well, more than that, in 2001, my mother was diagnosed with aplastic anemia in September 2001. And in December 2006, she passed away. So we had 5 years and 5 weeks after her diagnosis until her passing. And the truth is, when she was diagnosed, the day it happened, the doctor said, you got a few weeks left. And we were all scared and frightened. Personally, I was crying. I was in California on a holiday. I rushed back to New York, then spent the last few days with my mom. And then when that threshold was over, and they told us, 6 weeks, and she was still alive, things started to change, and we started to adjust to it. But she knew. The doctors always told her she's walking on eggshells. But thank God we had an extra 5 years and a couple of weeks, and we were very lucky to have that. Conversely, she passed away mid-December 2006. A few months later, in March, my wife's father he arrived for a business trip, Los Angeles, taking his car rental out of the airport, and as he's departing from the airport, a bus being driven by a drunk driver slams into it, and unfortunately, that was the end. His funeral was the next morning in New York. And if I contrast the two, since Batya and I were both dating then and considering, marriage, just to realize, I had more than 5 years to say goodbye to my mother. It was very difficult. It's not easy to say goodbye even when that time comes. The last 5 weeks in ICU were the most difficult of those 5+ years. But Batya didn't have any chance to say goodbye. She couldn't say goodbye to her mom. There was no chance to.
But that's suffering, because a person that's suffering for 5 years shouldn't rather go sooner. They know that they're going to die on the end.
Well, I'll tell you again from that personal experience. My mother wanted every single moment she could continue living in this world to have that opportunity. So I do believe that the discussion of suffering is very valid that you're mentioning. Very valid. Why should a person suffer? And people shouldn't suffer and shouldn't have to suffer.
For the person that's going, it's the best way to go, I think.
My mother felt that those 5 years were worth it. I discussed this with her. She said the suffering, the pain, the difficulties she endured in those 5 years was worth it. To have 5 more years with her family, to be at one of her children's weddings, to experience more grandchildren's births in that time, to have 5 more years in this world. She cherished every moment of it. She loved it, and she was very grateful for it. From a Jewish perspective, even if a person's suffering, which is not ideal, No one should have to suffer. But even if a person's suffering, we cherish every single moment that a person's alive. We say as long as a person is breathing, the soul has another moment in this world, whether it is to do another good deed, whether it's to accomplish another mitzvah, whether it's to study some more Torah, to connect to God, to inspire another human being. Every moment a person's here is to be cherished and to be appreciated. The suffering aspect I agree with you about, and it's a hard choice. Why would God make people suffer? That's beyond our comprehension. But certainly, as long as a person's in this world, every moment is of tremendous value. But the question at hand here is, question 4 and 5, if you're on page 48, is on the one hand, we look at Jacob asking for illness before dying. Prior to him, no one had a chance to set their things in order. So the question is, if your opinion were asked, would you vote to confirm Jacob's request, or would you rather, and I don't think there's anything wrong with that opinion, to say, rather to have a sudden, quick death, no suffering, no pain. My mother had 5 years to sort her business out. My father-in-law had no time to sort his business out. He had no expectation of dying that day. He had no time to tell any last will or testament to his children, no last messages, no goodbye. He saw them before going on the plane. See you soon. I'll be back tomorrow. It was a business trip. Is there a preference of one over the other if you had the choice? Would you rather the way my father-in-law went, which is the way everyone went before Jacob died, or would you rather the way my mother went, where you have that time? Maybe you don't want 5 dragged out years of illness, but you want at least a few days to say goodbye. What's that? You'd rather go straight away. But just thinking about the other side of the coin, where you have a chance to say, now what if we all knew the day we're going to go, right? And wouldn't that be ideal? But that's not the way it works. God knows the day we're going to go, we don't. Yeah?
Maybe the point is we have to live every day as if we're going to die.
Oh, we're going to get to that. In fact, that is a very famous Jewish teaching, which we're going to get to right now. So, just based on what we've been discussing, Western culture, old age is considered a curse. I'm going to lose my job. I'm going to be retrenched. I don't have the money I'm going to be sick. The other week we read the portion about Cain and Abel. So one of my seniors always reminds me, I walk with a cane because I'm not able. So we have that fear of aging, and the fear of aging, as we discussed, is related to the fear of death. Now, why are we afraid of dying? Which relates to why we're afraid of aging. Why are we afraid of dying?
Fear of the unknown.
Fear of the unknown. What else? What's that? Okay, well, I just want to get some ideas. I'm sure everyone's different. That's why there's not just one reason. What else? Anyone want to share? Fear of? Missing my family, yes. I'm scared to miss my family. I'm scared to miss all my good friends here.
My family missing me.
Scared of your family missing you? Okay. That's a Yiddish mama, huh?
Fear of suffering.
Fear of suffering. We're afraid of purgatory. What's going to happen in hell? Am I going to now meet those halos and pitchforks, and who knows what's going to happen to me there, right? Any other fears of death?
You won't be able to play golf.
Oh, of course. How do you know? Maybe in heaven they have golf, right?
You won't get all in one day.
I asked the question a different way.
Okay.
I asked the question, if dying was so bad,
Right.
why are we born?
If dying was so, why were we born? Were you here last week? Okay. So as we discussed last week, birth is not the beginning of the soul's journey in the world or existence. The soul preceded this world. And for the soul, in a sense, although today's Hayom Yom teaching says that the soul can't wait to come into this world. So we're going to have to work at this synthesis. On the one hand, the soul is coming from paradise. The soul is coming from the spiritual realm. In the spiritual realm, the soul gets to bask in the spiritual light, in godliness, and with angels. I mean, that's delight. That's paradise. That's, I don't know, imagine you're in Mauritius. You don't want to come back to Joburg. And then the soul's told, no, you got to go to this world. And the soul doesn't want to go to this world. Why should I come to this world? In fact, the Mishnah that we read last week tells us this world is only the antechamber to the next world. So the soul's journey through this world is just temporary to continue on to the next world. And that being the case, death is not the end of life either. It's just the end of another chapter of life, because the soul will continue on. So it's a good point you're making. But once the soul is here, and the soul realizes how much it could accomplish in this world, how much it could achieve, all the good things you could do, which you're not capable of doing without a body, then you don't want to leave this world. Life is good here. And then the soul doesn't want to go. And that's one of the fears of death. We don't want to leave the good world we're having. We have a good life here. So I'm talking about the spiritual life in this world, the things you could achieve and accomplish. So now, if we only knew the day we're going, we don't know. Ahmedinejad, you heard of him? He was visiting a psychic recently because since he lost the recent elections in Iran, he wanted to know, everything's going bad for him. Maybe the psychic could tell him when he's going to die. So he asks the psychic, when am I going to die? The psychic says, I can't give you the exact date right now, but I'll tell you one thing, it's going to be on a Jewish holiday. He says, which one? Purim. One of my great-grandfathers, Haman, died on Purim. He said, I don't know for sure if it's Purim, but I'll tell you, whatever day you die will be a Jewish holiday for sure. The Jews will rejoice. So as we had the story of Abraham getting old, Jacob fears illness before his death again because he fears leaving so suddenly. And just as we could see that old age is not to be seen not only as a curse, but there are blessings to be seen in old age. Izzy Singer, who was 103 coming to our senior programs, told us the best thing being his age is there's no peer pressure. He also reminded me what Jewish Alzheimer's is. We forget everything but the faribbles. Right? So now, illness before death should also not be seen as a curse. Obviously, suffering is a curse. It's not a good thing. But as we discussed, is there a flip side? Are there benefits? Are there blessings in the illness? Time to sort things out, right? So that fear of death that doesn't allow us to appreciate our blessings, but one who's in that situation, maybe now if we're out of the context of the situation, we could think of it differently. And that just takes us back to summing up last week's discussion. That on the one hand, the soul, which is the real me, is eternal. And therefore, just as the soul is a part of God and God is eternal, so are each and every one of us eternal. The soul is going back to its native place, to paradise, to the place where it comes from. So for the soul, it's not as spooky and scary to die as it is for the body. Another interesting point that we discussed last week that is, I think, paramount in order for us to continue today's discussion is realizing that death cannot happen by accident or prematurely. Death is determined by God. Well, what's the greatest cause of death in the world, you know? Birth. It's like the greatest cause of divorce these days. Have you heard what it is? Marriage. Yeah. But it's a very important point to realize. And we say it in our prayers throughout the high holidays. Mi bekitzo, who's going to die in their, what does bekitzo mean? In their time. Umi lo bekitzo, and who not in their time. That means, to me, there is a time when I am supposed to leave this world. Now, is it possible that I could bring that date forward or backward? Could I delay my death? That's all possible. And that's something we could discuss. From a Jewish perspective, we all have a certain allotted amount of time in this world. But we can lengthen that time if we merit, and we can shorten that time as well. Now, that doesn't mean that a person who died young, God forbid a child, that they did anything wrong. Again, it's possible that the person is a reincarnation, maybe rectifying for a previous life in this world. One shouldn't judge that just because a person died, we call prematurely, means that they've done something wrong. Because we don't have the full picture. Maybe that was the time that they were supposed to be in this world for. That's all. The future world, the other world, is called Olam HaEmet, the world of truth. There's a story told of a man who was searching for truth. I don't know did I tell this story last week? Because I hate to be too redundant. The man is searching for truth. And he goes to gurus and to rabbis and to priests and to ministers and to imams, and nobody's satisfying his search for truth. Until somebody told him to go to a certain home, a very distant place. And he travels, he takes a plane and a boat and a car and a truck and a horse and who knows what, down valleys and up mountains and through forests, and there he sees the address he was told. The GPS takes him there, and the house is very bright. Knocks on the door, comes inside, sees there's lots of light in this home. Many, many candles. He asks the old man with a long white beard, "What's all this? I've come to seek the truth." The man says, "You came to the right place. This is the place of truth." He says, "So what's the meaning of all this light?" He says, oh, there are billions of candles here. And as you can see, some of the candles, these little lanterns, are filled with oil and very brightly lit. And that's the amount of life they have left to live. Some of them are extinguished. Of the 6-7 billion we have in here, you can see which ones have how much life remaining. Ooh, some have very little, some have medium amount, some have a lot. He says, tell me, where's mine? What's your name? What's your ID number? Gives him his name, puts in ID 54376. So sure, go to aisle Z, row this, and he comes to see his candle. And as they say in Zulu, es wird nicht git. You know what that means? He looks, he says, oh my gosh. But the candle next to his got a lot of oil in it. So he's about to take some of that oil and pour some into his. And there's a tap on his shoulder. He said, you've been seeking the truth, right? Although that's only a metaphor. In the world of truth, there's no half-truths. There's no partial truths. That's the truth, okay? But if we weren't scared to die, that's my question for today. If we weren't scared to die, then how would we live our lives differently? What would we do different if we weren't afraid of death?
We would probably fly airplanes.
Some of us do that already, David, huh? Or some of us don't anymore. So that being the case, let's go here on page 49. We're going to explore right now the benefits of not fearing death. If you've come to terms with realizing that my soul is only here for a certain period of time, and there are two inevitabilities in life. One of them is taxes, and the other one is... And I realize it's going to happen anyways. Don't have to be so scared. The next world is not as freaky as it appears. Then I could think about it. And my question to you is, since we're thinking about it, if we're not afraid, then what benefits are there? What are the benefits of contemplating our mortality? Any perspectives? Realizing that we are finite, that we're only here for a certain period. What are the benefits of you and I realizing we're only here for a certain period of time? Urgency. Get things done. Oh, what do they say at our course? Get done. I can't say it in the shul, right? Urgent. Sense of urgency. Yes. Don't squander your time. Don't waste it on whatever.
What about living more spiritually?
Living more spiritually. Here, we have spirits. This shul, no shortage of spirit. Okay. Anyone want some spirit to be a little more spiritual? I concur with that. We got some other props. Any other benefits to contemplating our mortality, realizing that we're here just for a finite period?
I want to leave a footprint.
You want to leave your footprint, a legacy, okay? And that goes back to what Jade said a moment ago again. Get stuff done, urgency. Don't leave up for tomorrow what you can get done today. Because we all know when the procrastinators conference is happening. We actually don't, because yesterday they told me it's happening today, and today they said it's going to happen tomorrow. Doing mitzvahs, yes. Very good.
Making decisions better generally.
Thinking through them. Sadly, in my profession, especially as a rabbi who deals a lot with geriatrics during the day, unfortunately, I go to a lot of funerals. And when we're at West Park, for some reason, I have a short-term memory, so I suffer from craft. Can't remember a flipping thing. So when I leave, but when I'm at West Park, I all of a sudden get this wake-up call. Gosh, life is so short because people of all ages are dying. Everyone's dying to go to West Park. I don't know why, but it's the only way to get there, sort of. It's the only way to stay there. And it does certainly give us the Yiddish word treisel. It gives us a wake-up call. That why do I waste my life sometimes on certain trivial things? Yeah?
That's interesting because a lot of our texts were made to feel in a way threatened.
Right.
About death and suffering and how we're going to die, by stoning and by...
Right. It's scary, it's spooky. So I want to talk about that. The truth is, not all of our prayers do that, but it's good that you mention it, and that's what the rest of, somewhat of today's discussion is going to be. Some of our prayers on the high holidays are about how our death is going to be and that. But what that reminds me is, do I spend all my time thinking about my death? No. But certainly our prayers remind us about it from time to time. Right? And that's why from time to time we need that reminder. We realize that we're mortal. We realize that we have a short period of time here. Let's do what we have to do during that time. But which prayers do we sing more of? Do we in a Sana Tokif where we're talking about death? Or B'Sefer Chayim B'Racha V'Shalom? Right? Remember that prayer in the book of life with blessings, with peace, with prosperity, with wealth. What about that blessing? Think about all the blessings. When you open your prayer book, look at all the blessings. Yes, there are blessings that remind us of our mortality. But there are so many more blessings that remind us about life and that we should live life. So, based on what we've so far said, from a Jewish perspective, should we think about our mortality? Absolutely, we have it in our prayers. But we also have so many more prayers that emphasize the significance, the importance of life, of really seizing every opportunity, every moment of life. And we have a chorister who could tell us for himself about the best pieces of chazanas.
Rabbi, there was some of us that we had last week had a big discussion in the street outside.
Yeah.
And we found the verse or the song Rosh Hashanah completely contradictory.
Let's hear.
If there's a time like this desert errata, a time to live, a time to die, and every one of us are destined for this portion in life for this amount of years, then what is this thing of premature death?
Okay.
It's
So I think we discussed it a moment ago in a sense, that every person has their predetermined, so to say, amount of time they're going to live.
So what are we asking about premature? What is premature if it's predestined?
Okay. Again, so if you look back at that prayer, now the question that I was asking is, if we say in that prayer, mi bekitza umi lo bekitza, who's going to die in the right time and who's going to die in the not right time? What does that say? What does that not say? That there is an appropriate time, so to say, the date that was predetermined that we're going to leave. But the next word itself tells us that could change. And it could go both ways. Which tells me that, yes, we do have a predestined time. From the moment of birth, there's a certain amount of time. But maybe God could add more oil to our canister if we deserve it. And perhaps some of that oil could spill if we deserve that. Remember, even sometimes deserving doesn't mean it's not a bad thing. I can tell you many incidents in Jewish history, recorded Jewish history. I'll give you two examples. One of long ago, Adam was meant to live 1,000 years according to the Medrash. He gave up 70 years for one of his descendants. Well, all of us are his descendant, King David. Right? So it's not a bad reason. In more recent time, the Alter Rebbe, according to Hasidic tradition, was meant to die at a younger time, and his daughter instead gave up some of her lifespan for him. So it's not always because a person did something wrong. Sometimes, God forbid you should never be in this situation, but when somebody has a sick child, I've heard people say these words, God, take my life instead. Give my remaining years to the child, right? Give my remaining years to the child. So we see that there's the predetermined time, bekitza, and then there's lo bekitza. And that's where the rest of the prayer describes even the ways it could happen.
That's how people say, he died in the prime of his life.
Right.
That's prematurely.
Yeah.
Or child dies.
That's premature.
Prematurely. Unless you go in deep and know that it's predestined, realize it's all in God's
But that's the only thing, that none of us are privy to that. None of us are privy to know when was the person's predestined then. Because as the prayer concludes, what are the last three words? Uteshuva, utefila, utzedaka. Through teshuva, through my repentance, through my changing my personality, by giving tzedakah, being kind, generous to others. Teshuva, tefila, through my prayer, I could avert the decree. So if for whatever reason it was determined that I'm destined to die younger than my time, I say to God, listen, I'll be a better person. Be a better Jew, a better human being, a better whatever. I'm going to change. Will you grant me more time? And God decides if to grant us that more time. It's all in God's hands. That's the one.
Just through those three things.
Those are the three. I'm sure that God could decide anything, but at the end of the day, from Jewish tradition, there are three merits a person has: teshuva, changing our ways; tefillah, through prayer, asking, beseeching God; and tzedakah, being a good person, doing good deeds. Let's go around quickly, taking questions.
I think this was a question that was kind of asked earlier.
Yeah.
Why do we value life and pray for life so badly and so intensely if death is a good thing? If
Very
that's
good
what
point.
we're all intending to get to
Right.
and to ensure well, why are we praying?
So who needs life? Why do we value life? In Judaism, we have the Akedah in this week's parsha, not to be confused with Al-Qaeda, which is a whole different parsha, right? From a Jewish perspective, as important and special as the world to come is, and yes, that's where we come from, where we're going back to, nevertheless, this world is the purpose and mission for which we were created, why we were put into a body. This is the world of bodies. And this is the world in which a soul could accomplish that which it cannot accomplish in the other world. So as great as the other world is, this is the world of action. This is the world where we could achieve and accomplish things that are impossible to be done in the celestial and the spiritual realms.
We're asking for more time here. Is that
Yeah, because we say,
is that
imagine how much more good I could do here.
But then we ask them to change the predestiny date.
Yeah. That's why we do that, because we're scared to leave. We don't want to leave. For many reasons, whether it's our family, whether it's the good deeds we want to do. Every person has their reason why they want to stay. Yeah?
I think the fact that we have Yom Kippur confirms the fact that there is a pre-existing time and a premature. Because otherwise it doesn't make sense. There
Right.
would be a conflict of Yom Kippur.
Absolutely. Yeah.
If we assume that the soul is going back to paradise afterwards, okay, this leads to radicalism, because if you gonna, irrespective of what you do, you can do what you like in this world,
Right.
and say, irrespective of what I do, I'm actually going to go back to paradise. You can be a Muslim, you can be a Jewish radical.
Okay, so I don't mean paradise per se.
So you,
The journey to paradise might take some time. I go through a little.
but surely there's got to be something more that governs if you're going to paradise, or
Okay.
to what degree of paradise, or whatever, because otherwise you can do what you like.
Well, exactly like you said. And we're going to cover that in future lessons, not this week, but heaven and hell. I think that's lesson 5. We're going to talk about heaven and hell from a Jewish perspective. There's no doubt from a Jewish perspective, not everybody's going straight to paradise. And there are many aspects. There's something called kaf hakela, the slingshot, that a soul is flying around the world. There's something called chibud hakever, suffering in a grave. There is purgatory, there is hell. There's a heavenly tribunal when a soul goes up to heaven. And that's something Rabbi Bacha will focus on in next week's discussion about that, why certain customs and traditions exist in the Jewish faith when a person dies, because they're related to the soul's judgment that's happening on high. That's why for the entire year, we say Kaddish, we pray for the soul of a person who's departed, because every soul is going through its judgment during the year after a person's deceased. So maybe a person's going to make it to paradise if they deserve, but it might be a journey there to rectify things that they've accomplished or didn't accomplish in this world on the way. So leave it for lesson 5 and we'll discuss it then in greater detail.
And the purpose of it commemorating in your sons?
We'll discuss that in another week. I don't want to, we're already digressing and we're not getting to cover everything. So I want to take quick questions related only to today's discussion. And then Mark's got his hand up for a while, yeah?
Yeah, I don't know if this is the answer, but it might reconcile out of this question, which is, we read every day in our prayers that God recreates the world
Every moment.
So in effect, it could be a predestined time that God could be revisiting that every month.
Well, Yom Kippur is the time we say that God revisits it each year and says, do you deserve to live up to your predestined time? Whatever amount of time that is.
Shifting target all the time according to God's greater plan.
Right. Well, essentially, that's what Yom Kippur is for. It's for us to ask God if that time could change. Any other quick questions related to this? And I want to really move on because there's a lot to discuss. And we're not going to get a chance to if we keep on.
Yes.
Quick.
Does every soul come into a body?
Does every soul come into a body? It's a good question. According to Kabbalah, I believe not. That I believe there are souls that don't make it into bodies. Not every soul is for a body. Angels have souls too. And there's lots of other things that have souls. So not every soul has a body. Yeah.
Okay, so it's just a bit confusing. Do what you have to, because you can only experience and live whilst you're in a body.
Live in a bodily form. But,
Yes.
but as we told the story last week about the previous Rebbe, when they put a gun to his head, they were intimidating him in an interrogation. And they said, this toy, this pistol has made many people speak. And the Rebbe's response to them was, well, that could intimidate someone who believes only in this world. But from a Jewish perspective, I believe in one God and more than just this world. Realizing there is not only this world. Physically, our body has only this world.
Yes.
But spiritually...
But this is the only time you can achieve that.
Exactly.
Okay? So, if that's true, then why have we got all these restrictions of the Torah telling us how we should?
Don't you need an instruction manual? You know what?
But it gives you limits. It gives you limits. Don't do that. Don't do that.
Who said? Oh, one second. Is it limits? Let's put this into perspective. Okay, is it a limitation when they tell you that you shouldn't drive above 220 kilometers a mile? And that's quite a nice limit they're giving you sometimes on these roads, right? Is it a limit? Is it a restriction, or is it a guidance for your protection?
Depends on your person.
Depends on your person. I think that the restrictions the Torah is giving you, if you see it from another perspective, the Torah is saying you have one day of the week that you can enjoy with your family. You don't have to be stuck on your email. You don't have to be stuck on your Facebook. You don't have to be at the movie theater. One day of the week. Just a perspective. It's a perspective. I don't see it as a restriction. I see it rather as a way to live your life better. Why do we have instructions for anything else? You know what the instruction manual says? If I put this into the water, it's not going to work anymore. Because the same thing applies to each of us in our lives. You need an instruction manual to tell you how to live your life in a meaningful way. Let's take the last two questions. I really want to move on. What's that?
Can you be born with a gardening angel on your side? I mean, I've heard about 5
Yeah.
accidents and
Sure.
Not your talent.
mountains. And
Yeah. Certainly. Certainly a concept in Judaism. Yeah. David, yeah.
With respect to something today,
Yeah.
you're born basically free. You can do whatever
Yeah.
you want. But if you want to have a good life, there is a manual. That's the.
This is a very good metaphor. I'll give.
I'm not practicing.
Now, the metaphor I gave last week to Gershon, which when he asked this similar question was, if you look at a garden, in the garden you have lots of weeds, like lots of things that just grow, right? They just automatically be growing. Anyone been to the Walter Sisulu Botanical Gardens or to the Johannesburg Botanical, right? If you want to see how those roses and other the beautiful flowers in the garden, how they grow, they require tender, loving care. They require restrictions. They require being cut and handled and cared for. And the same thing applies to ourselves. God gives us, our soul has two capacities. There's the divine way and there's the animalistic way. Right? It's called Nefesh Elokis, the godly soul, and Nefesh Bahamis, our animal soul. And the animal soul is, what does it say in the book of, in the portion of Noah? We read it 2 weeks ago, last week, the portion of Noah. That is the natural state of man, our animalistic tendencies. The godly tendencies, you have to work on that. You have to nurture it, you have to nourish it, you have to work on it. And that doesn't just apply to a garden, that applies to our character traits, that applies to so many aspects of our life. If you don't nourish it, if you don't restrict it, then it's just going to go wild. A very interesting point, again, from something we read last week's portion, 2 weeks ago. We talked about the cherubs. Okay? Remember, it says there, where's the first time we have cherubs in the Torah? Anyone know? No. You didn't pay attention in Genesis. In the portion of Genesis, it says, when God expelled Adam and Eve from the Garden of Eden, then we evicted from the garden. It says there that outside the garden, there were the 2 cherubs and the revolving sword. Who on earth is going to put 2 rosy-cheeked children, 2 cherubs, with a revolving sword? This is a fascinating interpretation in Hasidic thought. It says the word cherubs, in fact, has 2 interpretations in the Torah. When it comes to the ark, they are defined in the Torah as angelic faces. But when they're outside the Garden of Eden, they're not angelic faces. And there they're described, look in Rashi's commentary, as malache chabala, demons, angels of terror, of dread. No, they're not the angelic faces. These are terrorists. Right? In Hebrew, in fact, mechabel is a terrorist. And that's the word that Rashi describes the same 2 angelic faces here. And the answer is, doesn't it seem conflicting? How could the same word, cherub, mean on the one hand demons, on the other hand angels? The angels are demons. Which ones are they? And the answer is each one of us has the potential to be an angel or a demon. When we're in the Garden of Eden, and you have everything, you're in paradise. You can eat from every single tree here. Just not from that one tree. Just don't touch that tree. You have all the freedom in the world, but you cannot discipline yourself not to do what you're told not to do. Then we're a demon. Then we're just terrorists. Then we're not in the right space. Now, where are they described as angelic cherubs? Where are they placed? On top of the ark. What was inside the ark? It's called the Ark of the Covenant, right? Inside the ark are the rules, the regulations of life. When a person is disciplined and follows rules and regulations, then those rules and regulations bring out the best in us and turn us into the cherubs, into the angelic faces. But when we just grow wild, and it's just weeds, and you don't cut them, you don't tend them, you don't nurture them, then we turn into demons.
You get allergies.
Yeah, we're going to move very quickly through the rest. We have a lot of text to cover and we didn't get a chance. So what I'm going to do instead is, we were going to do it in discussions and all that. I'm going to limit the rest of the discussion so we can finish within the next half hour. And I will just guide you through what the texts say, and you have homework to take home and to read through the texts by yourself and to really understand and explore. So the next text we're going to look at 4, 5a and 5b. Text 4 is Akavya ben Mahalalel. Anyone familiar with him? Great teacher in the Mishnah. Pirkei Avot. Everyone familiar with Pirkei Avot? Ethics of Our Fathers, chapter 4. It starts off with Akavya ben Mahalalel Omer, a great cantorial piece. And he asks a question. He says, Histakel. That's actually not a question. It's a statement. He says, Histakel. Pay attention, reflect. Bishlosha dvarim, 3 things. Ve'ena tavali dever. And then you will avoid succumbing to sin. What are the 3 things he says? Me'ayim basa. Where do you come from? You know where you come from? What does he say? Mitipas rucha. From a putrid drop. Ula ana taholech. Where are you going to? Where are you headed? Remember the story of Einstein on the train? They ask him, the conductor's coming around looking for tickets. They come to Einstein. True story. Could have happened sometime in the 1940s. They come to Einstein and he's looking for his ticket and he's putting this here. Maybe I put it here or there. The conductor says, don't worry, Mr. Einstein. I know who you are. You don't have to give me the ticket. Conductor comes back half hour later and Einstein's under his seat and over his seat. He's still searching for the ticket. Conductor says, I know who you are. We all know who you are. We trust you. We're sure you didn't just jump the turnstile. We're sure you bought a ticket. He says, I also know who I am, but I got to know where I'm going. Says Rabbi Akavya, says, where are you going? Do you know where you're going? To where? He says, Limakom. Anyone want to read it inside? Afar rima v'toleya. To a place of dust, maggots, and worms. And he concludes, before whom are you going to give a din v'cheshbon, an accounting for your life? You know, you think it's so easy to get upstairs. There's a heavenly tribunal. There was one guy, he came up to heaven. I don't know if I told this last week. I have to remember which stories I tell, which ones I didn't tell. Comes up to heaven, and all the dark angels come out to. He was a bad boy. He was no good. He was such a miser. One good angel comes out and says, no. He once gave charity. They was standing there in the corner in the intersection outside the Caltrain, and the guy's begging for some charity, and he gave him 2 rands. Come on, you got to give him credit for the good he's done. So the heavenly tribunal continues, and they're debating, they're deliberating what they should do, and finally the verdict was ordered, and they said, you know what? We're going to give him back his 2 rand, and we send him to hell. Of course there's a tribunal. Lifnei mi'ata, before whom you're going to give din v'cheshbon, an accounting of your life. There is a CCTV camera recording every moment of your life, of my life. And according to one interpretation, that's exactly what purgatory is. When we get a playback of our life story. And we see an opportunity missed here. And a good chance to do a mitzvah there. And all the embarrassing moments of our life when we say, oh my gosh, I could have done this and I could have done that. Today I got somebody emailed me a recording of a TV show I was on a couple of years ago. And I'm looking at it, I'm cringing. I'm like, ugh. I sounded like that. I said that. I can't believe it. Yeah, that's what happens. You get a playback of life. Yeah, you're going to have to give an accounting of what happened. And before whom do you give the accounting? Before the one who sees everything. Before the one who can't hide a thing. That's one Mishnah. Okay, let's go page 51 now. Page 51. Turn the page. Text 5a. It's a verse in Tehillim chapter 4. The 5th verse in Tehillim chapter 4, and it says, Rigzu v'al techto, be agitated and do not sin. The next line, say in your hearts, on your beds, and be forever silent. There's many commentaries on this verse, and one of the commentaries is here in text 5b, one of the commentaries, the Metzudat David on Tehillim. This is the Talmud. The Talmud gives a very interesting commentary on this, and says, what is King David telling us? Right? What does it mean to be agitated and sin not? He says, we all go through daily struggles in our life. We're all going through the battles and challenges that we encounter each day of life. And I'll go personal. I don't want to talk about other people's struggles. In my house, every morning, 5 a.m., there's a big fight. And it's not with my wife. She's a black belt. I would never mess with her. Okay? But I have a personal struggle inside. The Yetzer Tov, my good inclination, says get up an hour earlier, maybe go to the gym and run a little bit so you could pray, study, meditate before you pray in the morning. Don't come to shul at 6:32, maybe be at 6:27 one day, you know? That kind of thing. Is that little... And then I have another inclination. And the other inclination says, no, it's so much more comfortable to sleep. I let the two of them fight and I do sleep. And my good inclination always wins a few hours later. The first thing King David is telling us here is, he says, Rigzu v'al techta'u. You are going to go through challenges, through struggles, every single day of your life. And you have to win that battle. You have to win that battle. Don't concede to your evil inclination. He says, win that battle. That's the first thing he tells us. Okay? It's going to be a struggle. It's going to be a fight. But just in case you didn't win the battle, I get knocked down. Remember that song? But I get up again. If you get knocked down, just because you failed, it doesn't mean you are a failure. We all sometimes fail. Don't define yourself by the time we failed. We're not a failure. You got knocked down, get up again. Then the next word he says, Imru bavavchem, say in your hearts. The Talmud tells us, what does that mean? You can read it in detail in text 5b. A good antidote to fighting your evil inclination, the struggles, the battles of life, is, you see, there's two ways. If I'm getting up to no good, what's a good way to avoid that? Involve myself in doing good. So long as I'm occupied in doing good things, I'm not going to have the time to engage in something that's no good. Right? That's why King David says, Sur merah, stay away from evil. Va'aseh tov, by doing good right now, I don't have the time to do evil. So that's the second point King David is making. Study Torah, do a mitzvah, do something good, you won't have the time to do no good. The problem is, any honest person here knows, is that sometimes we go into the internet to study Torah, right? I can tell you, I have to prepare my PowerPoints for this class. But then I'm watching a TEDx, and I get involved in something else, and all of a sudden, not innocuous stuff, but we, go off on tangents. So King David's saying, if you're really struggling and it's not working, you're not winning the fight, involve yourself in something good. But what happens if you still get stuck, even while you're trying to do something good? You're on the diet, you're following it, it's going well, and then a tub of ice cream, you pass by Haagen-Dazs and you heard it's kosher, it's not Chalav Yisrael, So, he said, if you're still struggling, al mishkavchem, what do we do before we go to sleep? What is the Jewish custom before we go to sleep? What do we do? Say Shema. What with Shema is not just uttering words. It's not just a lip service. That's what sometimes our chazan in shul does. Just says the words and says them fast. It's not a racetrack. Slow down. That's why when Shema comes, what do? We cover our eyes. Why do we cover our eyes when we say the Shema? To concentrate, to focus, to be in the moment. Right? So that's what he's saying. Al mishkavchem. Before you go to sleep, you say the Shema, you focus for a moment. There's a Hasidic, beautiful tradition and custom that we do before we go to sleep. We think of the past day. You can take 5 minutes doing it, you can take 5 seconds doing it, but it's a great method to implement in your life, and you'll succeed in your spiritual growth, you'll succeed in your business development. Just listen to this. It's called cheshbon hanefesh. Before you go to sleep, you contemplate the past day. You think about, what have I accomplished today? You think about all the good things you did that day, and you be honest with yourself, and you realize which areas you could use a little bit of improvement in as well. You realize the flaws of the past day too. Yes? There were some mistakes I made today. And it's at night before you go to sleep that you say to yourself, how will I make tomorrow a better day than today? Morgen wird sein gar anders, they say in Zulu. Tomorrow will be a better day. But this is realistic because you reflect on the past day, you examined how good the day was, and how much better tomorrow could be. And you say, what am I going to do tomorrow to make it a better day? I do that in the morning. When I wake up, I say, tomorrow will be a better day. Tomorrow will make it a better day, right? But if you do it when you go to sleep, and you focus, and you concentrate, and you think about it, that's the next thing. Let's conclude, before I take the questions, the last thing King David says, and that's really the point we wanted to get to here, since we're talking about mortality. What does King David say? If nothing else works, what's the last thing you could think about that will really get you to focus, to get stuff done, to have a sense of urgency? What's the last thing he says? V'domu sela, when you'll be silent forever. If you think about the moment of death, think about what we think about when we're in West Park attending a funeral. We say, oy vey, what am I going to do better for my family today? What am I going to do better for myself? How am I going to be a better Jew, a better human being, a better parent, a better friend, and all that? Because I realize if I think about my day of death, that's a wake-up call, that's a reminder. Take 2 quick questions, and then we got to move on. Yeah.
Okay, I understand a proportion of the mitzvot in the Torah are
Yeah.
actually good deeds, and the rest are not necessarily good deeds.
In fact, the word mitzvah doesn't mean good deed at all.
Okay.
It means a commandment, yeah.
So, surely, I understand how the good deeds can impact your life, but when you spend your time following the mitzvot that aren't good deed, are you not preventing yourself from ultimately living every day as if it was your last? Because you can go through your whole life without ever trying the delicious taste of teriyaki prawns, or without ever having relationships with the many interesting people you meet in your life. And in fact, you could even go a step further, as people do, and land up ostracizing other people for their beliefs and their afterlife, such as gay people or depressed people who might be suicidal, or anyone else who doesn't follow a faith.
Okay, very good question. To answer it in short, firstly, no we need to I'm going backwards. No need to ostracize others just because you observe your faith. You could certainly respect another person's faith, and yeah, we could respect another person's faith and have them respect yours. There's no reason they should ostracize one another. I attend events with local imam, with the minister. We're all up there. We each respect each other. We each understand that each of our religions contributes to the world in a very unique way. So it's not ostracization at all. It shouldn't be ostracization. It should be respect, tolerance, acceptance, right? Going back to, I'm sure prawns are delicious, but for teriyaki prawns, that is. But that's only for people who are allowed to eat it. If my diet says that I cannot eat it, as a Jewish person, I'm given a strict diet by the Torah. Just like anyone else, a diabetic is given a diet. Teriyaki prawns might be delicious too for him, but if he takes it, he's going to have, it's not good for his physical... Well, no, I'm talking about the diabetic who's not Jewish. Right? I'm just making a comparison now.
Yeah.
As a Jewish person, the Torah tells me what's good for my soul, what's not good for my soul. Involving engaging myself in mitzvahs to the contrary. I'm not preventing having a relationship with others. On the contrary, this will enhance a relationship with others. Because there are 613 commandments I have in the Torah. And these are ways, like we said before, to nurture the beautiful flowers of life. And if you don't nurture them, if you don't water them, and you don't give them the nutrients they need, sun, water, whatever else is required, they're not going to be able to grow. So my answer to your question is, I think essentially, each person is unique in this world, just as each one of us is unique. It doesn't, the concept of Jews being the chosen nation is never flaunting and saying we're better than anyone else. We are chosen to follow the ways of the Torah. These 613 commandments are our ingredients to live a healthful life. That's what it is for us. Another person has their own ways. Every person in this world has their own unique mission to accomplish in this world. So as Jewish people, I think this enhances our identity. We can take the discussion further. I'm happy to do so after or perhaps another week. Yeah?
How do you actually live a Jewish life with a career, actually?
How do you live a Jewish life?
While trying to establish a career.
Well, establish a career. I'll say as follows. I still haven't established my career that well. But you can take my job. It's not so difficult to be Jewish and have this job. Although most Jewish mothers will tell you that being a rabbi is not a nice job for a good Jewish boy. Okay? They would rather, huh? I got work on Shabbos, exactly. I saw a Jewish mother in the park last Shabbos. She was introducing me to her 4 little kids. So this one's David, he's the lawyer. This one's Jaime, he's the accountant. That one, Sarah, she's the doctor. Right. So there are many successful business people in this country and many other countries who are religious Orthodox Jews, and they strictly live a Jewish life, and they only keep kosher, and they keep Shabbos and Yom Tov, and they're very successful in their careers. So if you want, we could discuss it personally, how perhaps we could find ways to make within it, if anyone wants that, I'm happy to discuss it. But certainly, it shouldn't be there's no reason for it to be, there's no conflict, I don't think. It certainly should work together. So the point, if you want to go to Appendix A, I'm going to skip it now, but the point that's being emphasized in Appendix A is exactly the point Jade made before, and that is a sense of urgency. If I realize, as King David points out in this chapter of Tehillim, that my life is finite, if I contemplate my mortality, as we asked before, then I will have a sense of urgency about the important things of life. It's important to be in shul, and it's also important to go to the gym. Yeah? The Torah instructs us to go to the gym, or any other form of workout. But there's a commandment in the Torah, eating food is a commandment in the Torah. And when you say the blessing on the food, and you sanctify it, and you elevate it, and then you use the energy from that food so you could run in the gym and be healthier, and you're a healthier person to do more of the mitzvahs, the commandments of the Torah that connect you to God and make an impact and change in the world, you're combining both aspects. You're making money, so we can have a beautiful shul, and you can go have a nice car, and have a nice house. And in your house, you can have lots of nice, delicious, kosher Shabbos lunches and dinners, and other good things. And Torah lectures. Okay, so you see the combination of both. Although, I was once in a hospital visiting somebody, and his kids were around him because it was his last moment. And they're all around, and he says, "Jaime, are you here?" He says, "Yes, I'm here, Daddy." "Sarah, are you here?" He says, "Yes, I am, Daddy." "Darling, are you here?" Well, he calls all the kids. So, "Who's watching the shop now?" They have the important things set up, right? When Moses Montefiore was once ordered by the King of England for an accounting of all his stock and what he has, he gave an amount that was far less than they knew he was worth. And they were very disappointed with him. They asked if he was deceiving, if he was cheating on his taxes, if this is a tax evasion, fraud. And he said, no. I only told you what I gave away, because that's what I truly have, what I've given away in charity. That's everything else. My warehouses, the stock could plummet tomorrow, especially if he had anything invested in Murray and what are they called? Anything could happen. But when you invest in real things, in real important things, as we discussed in last week's lesson, when there are people in this world who are alive but they're dead because their lives are lacking meaning. And there are people who are long deceased. Whether it was Jacob, who the Torah describes his funeral, yet says Yaakov Avinu lo mes, Jacob didn't die, describing to us how his morals, his ethics, his teachings, his legacy lives on. It's not just a legacy leaving a footprint, but his life was a true life. And that's what we should be aiming for. So the point is that when we think about death a little bit, when we think about our mortality, as was mentioned here, the idea, the benefits of contemplating mortality is we prioritize, we maintain focus. What's really important and lasting value for me? Where am I holding today? What have I achieved? What have I accomplished? Before I go to sleep tonight, I have to ask myself that question and then say, what will I do better tomorrow? Do I crave the nothings of life? Am I just, So let's just watch a quick video here. I think we'll put the point into focus. You've all heard of Alfred Nobel?
Dynamite, from the ancient Greek term for power, is a potent material indeed. But a person can hardly encounter a more powerful motivator to plan for his day of death than the opportunity to read his own obituary in the media. Alfred Nobel was a 19th century Swedish chemist and engineer with 350 different patents. He owned 90 factories that manufactured armaments and was the inventor of dynamite. His brothers Ludwig and Robert Nobel were tycoons with oil fields along the Caspian Sea. Alfred invested in his brother's enterprise and he grew ever wealthier. Then, in 1888, Ludwig Nobel died suddenly while on a visit to Cannes, France. The passing of one of the Nobel magnates was exceptionally useful. In their haste to hammer out the headlines, the French newspapers misidentified the deceased, mistakenly reporting that Alfred Nobel had died. Alfred was shocked to read of his own passing. He was deeply disturbed at the far from flattering obituaries. Bold black headlines screamed, "The Merchant of Death is dead." The fine print was no better. Dr. Alfred Nobel, who became rich by finding ways to kill more people faster than ever before, died yesterday. Alfred was sobered by an experience afforded few. Is this how I will be remembered when my time comes, he wondered? Will I be forever tainted as the merchant of death? Historians speculate that Alfred, determined to improve his genuine obituary by improving his lasting effect on humanity, took steps while still hale and hearty to ensure that mankind would remember him as an everlasting contributor to the advance of civilization and quality of life. On November 27, 1895, Alfred Nobel signed his last will and testament, designating 94% of his vast fortune to the creation of the Nobel Prizes. To this day, his name is synonymous with the advance of science, medicine, literature, and world peace. All it took to transform a merchant of death into an angel of progress and peace was a moment of serious reflection on mortality and its consequences.
I watched a wonderful TEDx the other day of a guy who was on that plane that crashed into the Hudson. Remember that story, like 2-3 years ago? And he talks about facing death, that moment. He thought he was dying. When the pilot said, "Embrace yourselves." Or what did they say? Something like that. Brace yourself, yeah. Embrace. I think brace is embrace, you know?
The same week 3 times.
Huh? You know that life is coming, and you know how that really made a difference to him. And I think if we examine those things in our life, now the truth of the matter is, we realize that our existence transcends just the material things. It's not just about accumulating more toys and more things. So that's why the teacher, Akavia b'mahalal in the Mishnah says, Histakel b'shlosh dvarim. He doesn't just, he says, reflect on these 3 things. Think about them. Then you won't come to some, realize where you come from, where you're going to. Okay? The day of death really gives us that clarity. If we're facing death, we're facing that moment, we say, what's really important to me? What do I really want to accomplish in my life? And you can see in Appendix C, in the book, it's on page 69. Appendix C is a book that talks about, it's from a nurse, and she spent time in the hospital with dying patients in palliative care. You can read here the top 5 regrets of dying patients. Okay, number 1, I wish I'd had the courage to live a life true to myself, not the life others expected of me. Number 2, this is probably the most famous one. I wish I hadn't worked so hard. We're working so hard for our family that we sacrifice our family for this work. But, you know, did I tell you last week about Mr. Reichman? I think his name was Edward Reichman, dad, 8 years. He didn't get to take his favorite pair of socks with him and he died. You can't take that stuff with you. So what's more important to me, my family or an extra couple of bucks that I'm spending more time in the office for? Number 3, I wish I had the courage to express my feelings. Number 4 was I wish I had stayed in touch with my friends. Very important. I'm not so good at it, but I try at least on my friends' birthdays, as many as I could remember. And these days, it's much easier for us with Facebook. Our friends all put their a lot of people put their birthdays on Facebook. The only thing they don't put is the year they're born, right? Nobody wants to give that away. The rabbi has to interrogate to find out when you were born. And the last thing, I wish I had left myself be happier. Why are we so miserable? In the olden days, you look at the pictures of the weddings, they're black and white, everybody's serious, it's wartime. And those marriages lasted a lifetime. And today's marriages, everybody's smiling and giggling, and if they're not, in whatever fancy pose the photographer's trying to take, he'll shoot them, pun intended. And how long are the relationships lasting for? Are they really truly happy? So there's a new thing these days called YOLO. Somebody mentioned it, but anyone know what YOLO stands for? You only live once. Very true. You only live once. And Judaism doesn't dispute that. We only live once, our soul and our physical body. And so we have our bucket lists. I think a bucket list, at least the trivial aspect of it, is such a trivial thing because life, we're going to kick the bucket soon. But that's not a Jewish perspective. From a Jewish perspective, you're not going to kick the bucket. Life is a lot more significant than kicking a bucket. So if you see it that way, then you realize there's another way. Maybe we can have our spiritual to-do list as well. That doesn't mean you have to negate the physical aspects of life. But a spiritual to-do list helps you live your life more meaningfully. And yes, we contemplate. Now, King David didn't put death the first thing on his list. In fact, it was the last thing on the list. So like we said before, some of our prayers reflect on death. A lot more of our prayers reflect on life. King David tells us many things we could do to live a meaningful life. The last thing he said was, nothing else works. Just think about death. Maybe that will give you a wake-up call. But it doesn't mean we should live our life just thinking about death. There's a story they tell about a fellow who was really struggling to earn a living here in Joburg. So he gets one of these emails, probably from some Nigerian and I don't know where. Come to Treasure Island, to Diamond Island. He hears about this Diamond Island. He hears that in this Diamond Island, the streets are paved with diamonds. There's diamonds everywhere. So with his wife's blessings, after being a miserable failure, after trying everything he could, this guy, it was just a lo yutzlach, they call him. He was selling stereos when iPods came out. And this guy's, everything he starts selling hats, they go out of style, everything. He doesn't succeed. So finally he goes off to Treasure Island, to Diamond Island. And indeed, it's amazing. He gets there, all he's got to do is buy the ticket. He arrives in Diamond Island. And he's stuffing his pockets with diamonds. Diamonds here and diamonds there and diamonds everywhere. And then he's hungry, he goes to the restaurant. He comes inside, he orders a meal like he's never seen before. And the waiter comes with the bill. And he pulls out a couple of diamonds. He says, "Here, keep the change." The waiter says, "Sorry, buddy, but in this island, we all have diamonds. It's abundant. Here you got to pay with chicken fat. That's the currency." Chicken fat? I have no chicken fat. What are you talking about? I got to go back to Joburg, go to Moshe's, pick up some gribbiness. Maybe I'll get some chicken fat. Sorry, you can't go back. You got to pay your way. So they put him into the kitchen. He's got to work his way off to pay up with his chicken fat. Before you know it, he's accumulating truckloads of chicken fat. And he loads the chicken fat onto his boat because he remembers he has a family still in Joburg. He's on his way back home. He arrives, he stinks, and his family says, "Hey, he smells, but at least hopefully he's got some diamonds." And he presents him with chicken fat. And his family looks at him and says, "Is this what you left us for? Is this what you left us for? To bring back chicken fat?" And he said, "I was supposed to go to collect diamonds." He digs into his pocket, and there was some of the chicken fat. He found some of the diamonds that he collected before. A couple of more diamonds, some more diamonds here, some more diamonds there. And the metaphor, of course, is telling us is that we came into this world for meaningful things. We're not going to be able to take that stuff with us. And some of those nice fancy cars and homes and whatever else we accumulate, nothing wrong with them. But think about what's chicken fat to you, what's stinking, and what's really meaningful, what's a diamond. And are we sometimes confusing the diamonds with other things? Don't confuse your diamonds with schmaltz. Okay? The schmaltz tastes good, but it stinks, and you can't take it to the next world. So remember that lesson, how important it is to contemplate on the important things of life. Now, we started 10 minutes late, so I'm going to take you for 10 more minutes. Okay? Otherwise, it's 8:44 now, which is when we officially end. But we'll go for 10 more minutes. I'll take you through the texts. No questions until after that, then you're welcome to ask questions. So another positive effect in contemplating on mortality is in text 6. If you look at text 6, it talks about this concept. This is the Zohar. And the Zohar says that we have been taught that we should always agitate our good inclination against our evil inclination, again, as we read here. And again, it's taking us through this exact same idea. Talking about the Yetzer Hara, our evil inclination, is symbolic of death. The Yetzer Tov, our good inclination, is symbolic of life. And how, on the one hand, we have to realize that there is death, and it's going to happen. But at the same time, remaining focused on life. What's more important, life or death? What's more important, this world or the next world? Well, you got to be a two-handed rabbi. It depends. While you're in this world's more important. And that's why we have to focus on life. We have to enjoy this world. We have to be joyous in this world. And that's a very important aspect that one has to realize. That death, yes, we think about it, but it shouldn't be your focus all the time. You shouldn't always be thinking about death every moment, because then you're really getting into the wrong direction. So back to the point here is that our mortality reminds us of our essential vulnerability. That you got here in the Zohar. The Zohar talks a little bit about that, realizing we should be humbler. Okay, Golda Meir said, don't be so humble, you're not so great, so don't be too humble. But maybe death gives us a little bit of a feeling of humility. Okay? It's a little bit humbling to realize we're going to die. All right? And we're vulnerable. We're far from invincible. As much as we think we're invincible, we're not going to live forever. We can't take our body or our material possessions with us. We are going to be accountable when we come up to heaven for the life we lived in this world. So we have to face our choices. Were those choices the right choices or not? Okay? And it says in the Zohar, in text 6, that it's pride, our ego, that gets in the way of doing the right thing. Yeah, why are there so many celebrities getting into trouble? What do you think it is? You have a young boy, Justin Bieber. He could have become, he's a great celebrity. Why is he getting into so much trouble these days? And he's just one of so many. Well, when the ego gets to us, our pride gets in the way, and it's the work of our evil inclination. So arrogant people make these mistakes in life. Make mistakes, and therefore we have to be careful about that. Don't let the petty things get in the way. So here's a question. What's more valuable? Time or money? Page 54. What's more valuable, time or money? Okay, we all agree time is more valuable. But at the end of the day, which one do we choose? I'm going to give you a choice.
Without the money, you wouldn't.
Well, either, here's the choice. Either you pay me $1,000 so I could pay for my ticket to go to New York, or spend your day watching some useless TV show. Whole day I got to stay in bed. Which would you rather do? Pay me the $1,000 or spend your day in bed?
Well, there is an easy answer. $1,000.
It's relative. As much as we all agree time is money and time is worth more and time is more important, at the same time we also find that we hold on to our money more than to our time. We'll spend more time to make money, even though we could be spending the time doing other important things. That's the reality of life when you contrast the two. So text 7 is a Jewish proverb from the Talmud. It says, what does it mean? They wrote it into a little rhyme here. People worry about the loss of a dime, but not about the loss of their time. Happiness their money will not earn, and their days will never return. And there's another famous Jewish song that goes, I diggy die, diggy die, diggy diggy dum. You know what that means? I don't know. I won't sing the whole song for you, but the song is Da'aga minayin. Worry, where does it come from? Ha'avar ayin. The past is gone. Yesterday's history. Ve'ha'atid adayin. Which means the future hasn't yet come. Tomorrow's a mystery. But the moment now is going to fly by with a blink of an eye. And so yesterday's history, tomorrow's a mystery. But today is a gift, and that's why it's called the present. Exactly. Remember that. Remember the past, live the present, and trust the future. But we really have to live in the moment. Living in the moment is not about YOLO, you only live once, so just go, eat, drink, and be merry, for tomorrow we die. What's that song, The End is Near? I know something, it's sooner than you think. Sooner. Some old song from long ago. I'm sure some of you know what I'm talking about. But the point is, at the end of the day, money is fungible. Money is something, it comes and it goes. Is there a difference in the value between my crumpled 100 Rand note and a crisp one? But time is irreplaceable. The time that passed will never be able to be made up again. Ever. Right? Just like our children. You could change one thing for another, but if I brought my kid to school in the morning, I can't go home with another kid from school. It just doesn't work that way. Okay? So text 8. Let's look at text 8. We got 5 minutes remaining. I'm going very quick. It tells us here that if not for the fear of death, what wrongs would we commit? And it gives us an example here. The Talmud tells us about the early generations. The Torah tells us Adam lived 930 years. Noah lived 950 years. They lived long lives. But were their lives meaningful? No, they lacked meaning, and that's why God wanted to destroy the world. They lacked meaning in their life. They had everything going for them. They lived in paradise even. But it wasn't meaningful. It's not about how much time we have, but it's how we use that time, how we utilize every moment we have. Text 9, the Talmud tells us, live every single day as if tomorrow were your last day. And therefore the Talmud says, do teshuvah, repent the day before you're going to die. I think I just messed up the Talmudic statement. The Talmud says, do teshuvah the day before you're going to die. It's in Pirkei Avot, Ethics of Our Fathers, right? How do you know when you're going to die, right? That's your question. Just ask it. What do you mean do teshuvah the day before I'm going to die? I don't know what day I'm going to die, so what day should I do teshuvah? Every day. So that takes me to another question for you. Which day is the most important day on the Jewish calendar? Today. Exactly. Today is the most important day on our Jewish calendar. If you look here at Steve Jobs, I'm not going to put on the video clip for you right now because there's no time, but you could Google it and watch it. Steve Jobs said, for the past 33 years, I've looked into the mirror every morning and asked myself, if today were the last day of my life, would I want to do what I'm about to do today? And by the way, if you listen to the clip, you'll realize he has many other tips. But this is one of them. Just like the Talmud said, the last thing. Steve Jobs, the creator of our iPhone here, okay? He tells us this is the hardware, this is the body, the software is the soul, okay? An iPhone is worthless. You have a fancy phone, but if you don't have the right Apple software in there, even if you jailbroke it, it's just an enhanced iPhone, then you don't get the soul. The soul is the main important part. It's the software inside there. So again, death is not to give us a morbid life, but it frames the importance of life. And so we sometimes like to think we're going to live forever, especially teenagers. Maybe that's why they live so freely. But of course, if we would care a little bit less about certain things and care more about wasted money or wasted time more than about wasted money, we'd be in a much better place. So if we view every day like the Talmud said, like tomorrow's the last day, we'd be living a little more meaningful of a life. That sense of urgency that it creates within us. And of course, the benefits, as we could put over here, is you're able to live life without regrets because you don't want to mess it up. You don't want to insult your friend and then have to ask for apologies. Rather, live today meaningfully. And if I did insult my friend, ask for forgiveness today. Don't put it off for tomorrow. Improve ourselves, improve our relationship with God, and improve the relationships with all our fellow human beings. Text 10. This is again the Mishnah, and the Mishnah tells us that about Yom Kippur. It says that on Yom Kippur, God forgives us for all our sins. Which sins? It's where you put the comma. Mikol chatosechem lifnei Hashem. All our sins before God are forgiven on Yom Kippur. If I did something wrong to someone else, I got to turn to that person and ask them to forgive me. I got to reach out to that person. So remember, that Yom Kippur aspect, we got to take it with us every day by living a meaningful life every single day. Now, of course, we spoke about the advantages of thinking about immortality. There are disadvantages as well. And I want to be clear about that. You can see this here on page 58 in text 11. You can't think about death all the time, okay? If you think about death, it's going to be morbid. You're going to live a very sad life. That's why it was the last thing on the list. Think about all the other more meaningful things, and then you'll realize that, if nothing else works, think about death. But it makes us sad thinking about death. So that's a last resort, is thinking about death. Finally, here's a little story that the Talmud tells us in text 12a. Not the Talmud, but it's a little later. But a very interesting story. And I think the story gives us a very important point. The story was a man was in jail. I don't know why. He evaded taxes. He did something wrong. He was a criminal. Whatever it was. A Jewish man's in jail. Maybe he did nothing wrong. In the past, there have been times that their only crime was being Jewish. He winds up in jail. And his lawyer managed to secure 1 day a year he was allowed freedom. Imagine, a man's incarcerated in jail. 1 day of the year they tell him emancipation. So his question to his rabbi was, what day should I choose? What day would you choose? Should it be Yom Kippur? Should it be Purim? Should it be what day would you choose? The rabbi told him, today. You don't know what tomorrow's going to bring. The first opportunity you have to do good, seize that opportunity. So, again, living this way, you have a clear sense of your priorities in life, okay? The humility and the mitigation of self-destructive ego and pride, as we discussed before. Death tells us we're going to wind up dead. A little bit of humility helps us subdue our ego. And living in the now, truly valuing every single moment that we have. And again, the most important day on the Jewish calendar is today. Okay, page 60, I'm looking here at text 12b, and that was the answer the rabbi gave. What day would be the day to leave jail? He said, do it today. Don't put it off for another day. Obviously, if a man had some important event coming up, you could choose another day. But this is all telling us, text 13 is from the Baal Shem Tov, don't put off for tomorrow what you can do today. Don't postpone, don't procrastinate. You want to accomplish something? It doesn't have to be something spiritual. Whatever you want to do it. Don't put it off. Okay? But think about the thing you want to do. Is it something you really, truly will make a difference in your life? Okay, so that's the point. We have the potential each day to accomplish so much. Don't put off for tomorrow what you can do today. Text 14 is the concept of maximizing each moment, really doing the things we could do. There's a very good point that I want to point out here. What's better, to write out one check at the beginning of the year, make one EFT payment, or to give tzedakah every day? Even if it's less, give every single day. There is a fund that the Rebbe started called Keren Hashana. If you're not able to give charity every day for some reason, you give it to that fund, and that fund is earning compound interest in its account each day, so your money is increasing, and the fund is giving charity on your behalf every single day of the year. If you want, I could arrange it for you through the shul or whatever. But the point is that by giving charity every day, having a charity box in your kitchen, so before you're indulging in your delicious food, you think about someone less fortunate who has nothing to eat. You give charity for them. Pull out the phone, call someone elderly you know. Say the Shema, do something meaningful. Text 15 talks about retirement from a secular perspective. I could speak from knowing senior citizens, and I know that people are deteriorating, their health deteriorates when they retire because all they want to do is watch TV. If you don't occupy yourself, if you're not doing something good, this guy says it's a good, quiet retirement. Most days I do nothing, but it takes me all day to do it. Okay, just think about that. If you're ever considering retirement, find things to do. There are so many meaningful things people could do. Ways they could make their life more meaningful. For example, volunteering. Elderly people have so much experience. More than any college, university could give somebody, the experience of life. They could volunteer, they could give charity, they could help a local school, they could mentor students. There's so many ways that elderly people could get involved. They could spend time mentoring, sharing their wisdom and experience with others, and of course, the spiritual enrichment, studying Torah, deepening the relationship with God. As one senior citizen told me, you know why a lot of old Jews are studying Torah when they get old? They're cramming for the finals. Okay, but with all that unique expertise and experience, it's important that people utilize those golden years in the right way. Okay, if you know anyone considering retirement, suggest to them to use their time in those meaningful ways that we discussed. Whether it's coming to our Chabad programs in the morning studying Torah, or volunteering at OrtJet and mentoring other people, or whatever it is. Okay, the point is a person who is free from the burden of fear of death, and recognizes that every day of life is a gift from God with the potential for productivity. That is the way one should be seeing old age. Is that I don't fear death. Whenever it comes, it's going to come. I realize that's the next step, the next stage of my life. But Abraham prays for old age, not as a curse, but as a blessing. So to recap today's lesson, you got to see the blessing in old age. And there are lots of practical things people could do. And one of them I would suggest is wills. Wills are not just practical things to decide where the money's going to go, not just to prevent their kids from fighting. You know the old joke, what do the kids do when we die? Fight? Okay. So it's not just that, not just settling debts, settling those things that we have to before dying. Don't leave it for your reputation. Don't leave it for your kids. If you have debts, halachically you have an obligation to settle those debts before. But there's also an ethical will, which we discuss in text 17. And that is also to take about spirit, to ensure that the end-of-life treatment will be in accordance to Jewish tradition, knowing if you're allowed to harvest any of your organs, are you allowed to donate for a transplant? It's a discussion. It's something that's worth discussing. And you want to make sure it's done in the appropriate way. And to ensure that your body is treated with respect in accordance with Jewish law. Text 18, here we're talking about Maimonides tells us the most important thing from a Jewish perspective is actually to preserve life, to live every moment to its fullest. So don't focus or think about death. Death is only to be a reminder, our mortality, about how limited our time is in this world, and to utilize every moment to the best of our ability. So here's a few good important points. We look forward to life, and we don't look forward to death. Number 2, we're excited about life. We're not excited about death. You will no longer be able to do all the amazing things you could do while you're alive in this world. We work to preserve life. We don't work to bring on death. Okay, we do anything possible to preserve every moment of life, despite the suffering of the patient. Yes, we want to alleviate suffering, but we cherish every moment of life we have. We hope for life, God forbid never to hope for death. And finally, we know about death, but we never forget it, and we're always ready for it. Meaning, as long as we live a meaningful life, we'll realize that every moment is of tremendous value. So if you think about the story of the diamonds, the soul enters the world on a mission to collect diamonds. And that being the case, it's hard to remember the diamonds when everyone else is busy with schmaltz. So, I hope after today's discussion, you will just think a little bit about that and enjoying our diamond island. There was a lot more I wanted to discuss, but it is already past due, and we're going to end it right here. According to this, I went 4 minutes over.